Hey y'all, coming at you with some Insta coaching here. Some Insta coaching, Insta coaching. I feel like I need a theme song for Insta coaching. Does anybody have any ideas? What I want to talk about today is living inside out rather than outside in. This is something that many of us have heard many times, and I want to clarify what it actually means to live inside out and how to do it. And happy 11/11. So inside out living is when we get really clear about how we want to feel, what we want to believe, the results we want to produce, and what we desire. And then we create that in our reality rather than looking to our reality to tell us how we're supposed to feel and what we're supposed to believe and the results that are possible for us and what we're allowed to desire and what we're not allowed to desire. In a second, I'm going to share an illustration that many of you who have worked with me are very familiar with, and I'm going to use this illustration to illustrate the difference between inside out living and outside in living. So as most of us know, if you look at this one way, it's a duck. If you look at it another way, it's a bunny. If you're taking the duck perspective, you have evidence to back up your perspective. You see the beak, you see the back of the head, you can clearly illustrate why it's a duck. If you take the bunny perspective, you have evidence to back up your perspective that it's a bunny. You see the ears, you see the cute little nose. And my question for you is, what is the truth? What is the capital T truth? What is the one truth of which animal is pictured in this illustration? There is no truth. There are just multiple valid perspectives that can be backed up by evidence. Now, when we live believing that there is a truth to reality, then we look to reality for evidence to tell us what the truth is, rather than choosing the perspective that we want to see and then creating the evidence to support that perspective. This is the difference between outside in living and inside out living. Now, the reason most of us are stuck living an outside-in life is because we believe that there is a truth. We do not look at the world like an optical illusion. We look at the world like there is a truth about it. And we look at other people like there is a truth about them. So we go around trying to decide who's a duck and who's a bunny, including ourselves. Now remember, to decide comes from the same root word as suicide, homicide. Side means to kill off. To decide means to kill off other possibilities and sentence ourselves to a singular possibility. Even think of the word sentence. Sentence, like a prison sentence. So many of us use our sentences, use our language to cast spells, right? Spelling, we spell out words, and then we cast spells through our sentences that are killing off profound possibilities. Now, in Landmark, they talk about the difference between deciding and choosing. Deciding is when we kill off possibility based on reason. We kill off possibility based on the evidence that we see out there in the world. Whereas choosing is to choose freely from nothing, to choose the perspective that we want to come from, not based on reason, not based on evidence, to choose based on what is the most expansive perspective that I can create, that I can come from. Choosing means no longer believing that there is a right answer to is it a duck or is it a bunny? It's getting that there's no truth to it. Which is more expansive for you to see? What is the perspective that you choose to see? What is the perspective that gives you access to being who you're most committed to being? When we live believing that there is a right answer, that there is a truth that exists out there, then we spend our lives trying to collect evidence to figure out what that truth is. And then we are forced to do things like be dependent upon validation from others. When we believe that there is a truth about us and a truth about other people, then we're constantly looking for others to validate us. So we are hooking up with people that really aren't in alignment with who we're trying to call in, just so that we can collect evidence that we're worthy, that we're desirable, rather than getting that there's nothing true about me. It is not true that I'm good enough. It's not true that I'm not good enough. It's not true that I'm deserving. It's not true that I'm not deserving. It's not true that I'm lovable. It's not true that I'm not lovable. It's not true that I'm smart. It's not true that I'm not smart. There's no truth to me. And when I get that, then I can simply get curious about what perspective do I want to invent? How do I want to cast spells with my words in this moment? It's not about, is it a duck or is it a bunny? It's about, what perspective do I choose freely from nothing? What perspective do I choose? And from the perspective that I choose, that will give the evidence that I will see. If I were to tell you, I'm going to show you a picture of a bunny, and I held up that optical illusion, guess what? You would see the bunny first. That's how our brains work. So if I believe that I'm not good enough, then my brain is going to see all of the reasons that I'm not good enough. If I believe that somebody doesn't like me, my brain is going to see all the reasons that they don't like me. So it's not once I see it, then I'll believe it. It's when I believe it, I will see it. To live this perspective is intense. It requires for us to take full responsibility of how freaking powerful we are. Is much more convenient to live as if there just are ducks out there and there just are bunnies and that's just the way it is and there's nothing we can do about it. That is much more convenient to live that way, because then we get to be the victim of all the metaphorical ducks of the world, rather than taking responsibility for how we call people into being by the perspective that we have of them. That the way that we see people has everything to do with what we are believing about them, and that we are creating for people to be how they are through the way that we listen to them. I cannot tell you the number of times in my life that I've gotten it into my head that somebody doesn't like me. And as long as I'm believing that they don't like me, all of the evidence that I can see is that they don't like me. It is not until I choose to actively change my perspective, not because I have evidence that they like me, but because I get that what I'm believing about them creates how they are towards me. And as soon as I change my perspective and I choose to come from the perspective that they love me and they want to deeply connect with me, miracles happen. Oh my gosh, the way that these people transform. Another way of saying this is, rather than have, do, be, we want to flip that on its head to be, do, have. The way that most people live is they wait until they see results before they give themselves permission to be who they want to be. They wait until they have the financial riches so that they can then be generous. They wait until they get enough attention from men so that they can then be confident. They wait until they've lost the weight so that they can then be a leader. This is living have, do, be, allowing results, circumstances to dictate who we get to be. Living be, do, have is living inside out rather than outside in. Have, do, be is outside in. Be, do, have is inside out. So rather than waiting for results to give us permission to be who we want to be, instead, let's get really clear about, who am I most committed to being? What are my core desired ways of being? I want to be of service. I want to be at peace. I want to be accepting. I want to be forgiving. I want to be inspired. I want to be creative. I want to be flexible. These are the ways that I'm committed to being. When I look from that perspective of, this is who I'm committed to being, then what actions would I take from that perspective? The actions that I take are going to produce the results that I want. If I'm waiting around for the results to give me permission to be who I want to be, I'm going to be waiting for forever. So yes, living inside out living takes a hell of a lot more responsibility than living outside in living. And living inside out is so much more freeing, because we are no longer at the effect of anyone's opinion, of any belief that we have about ourselves or about someone else. We are no longer at the effect of any result, any circumstance. We are free to be who we're committed to being in this now moment and always. If there is any area of your life where you feel that you're living outside in rather than inside out, and you don't feel that you're showing up how you're committed to showing up, you're not producing the results that you're committed to producing, reach out to me and we will schedule a free 30-minute coaching session, and I will coach you on having a breakthrough in that area of life. So you can go to my website, brandolintebo.com/work with me, and you can fill out an intake form and we'll set up that free session.